quickly share my screen. So in our previous session, we have seen what do we mean by SailPoint and what are the different products available in the market and what problems we are going to solve. Like we have seen all of those things. And at the end of the day, we have agreed upon the tool that we are going to use. So which is going to be our SailPoint IIQ, and there is a tool we are going to learn. So now let's deep dive into the tool itself. I mean, like the SailPoint tool itself. So before learning the tool, actually, we should know about the tool, like what this tool is all about, like how it works, like how it is architected, how the structure of the tool is. Like we'll get to know all of this information. Okay. So first thing we'll know about the very high level architecture of our product. So which is going to be our SailPoint IIQ. Okay. So as mentioned here, so we are going to use SailPoint IIQ as an Java-based web application. Okay. So we have different types of applications available. So we have like Windows applications, which we install on our Windows, or if it is the Mac OS, like we'll install those applications on our Mac and we use it. So that's one kind of application. And we have something called mobile applications. We'll install it on our Android or iOS mobiles and we use it. Okay. And the third type is like web applications. So web application in the sense like something we access through browser. So whenever we have any web browser, like we open the web browser and we'll provide an URL for our site and we'll start using the application. So that's nothing but web application. So this SailPoint IIQ is going to be one such application. It's a web application. It means like we are going to use it through our browser, and it is a Java-based web application. So when we say Java-based web application, it means so the underlying technology used in developing this web application is Java. Okay, so that's why like we are referring this SailPoint IIQ as a Java-based web application. Okay, so now that we know like how this application is going to be, and it's important to understand so some of the like things about a web application, how a web application works. Okay, so anybody have any experience in developing or in using the web applications, like how it basically works? Any idea? Any clues?
No, why?
Okay, so let me explain you that as well. So I'm opening some file, so which helps you like understand few things. Okay, so whenever we say web application, and we said right, we can access it through a browser. So how that is available basically? As we discussed here, like these are the different types of applications that we use. For example, mobile apps. So mobile apps in the sense like we get the APK or we get some installer file from either App Store or Play Store, and we'll install that application in our system. So that's how we'll get this application, and that's how it works. And similarly for Windows, like we'll get some installer, we'll get some application to run. Once we run that, like we'll get it installed in our local machine and we'll start using it. But in case of web apps, we don't have anything like that. We are simply accessing some URL via browser, but we are getting some functionality, or we are getting some pages done. Like how it basically works. Okay, so let's understand that. So the main concept behind web application is a client server architecture. Okay, it means like when you are accessing an URL from the browser, your browser is nothing but client. It means you are a requester. Okay, and in the background there is something called an server. Okay, so whenever you try to raise a request, or suppose like you will hit an URL, let's say amazon.com. So this is the request you are making from your browser. So your browser is nothing but your client. So whenever we hit this URL via internet, this address is passed through some DNS. It is called domain naming service. So through this domain naming service, it identifies a server. It identifies a server over the internet where this amazon.com website is hosted. So when we say hosting a website, it means like all the files related to this amazon.com will be present in some server. Okay. So whenever we hit the URL, our request will go via internet and reaches this server. And after reaching the server, like this server process your request. So whatever may be the amazon.com that you have hit, it goes and it identifies the server and it hits the server. And within the server, this request is processed and this server gives a response back. And the response will be showed on our browser. So the response received from that server is nothing but the home page that we are getting. Okay. So in order to see this in a visual form, you can see this is how it works. For example, this is your client, which is nothing but our web browser. And whenever we access something via our web browser, whenever we request something via our web browser, over the internet, it has some DNS mappings and all, and it goes to a particular server where your application is present. Okay. And this server basically processes your request. And after processing the request, it gives a response back to your client. So that response is nothing but whatever may be the like screen that we are getting on the browser. For example, initially when you hit amazon.com, so from this client amazon.com will go and this server process your request and it gives the Amazon homepage. So once you get response from this browser, you will get the homepage. Then after getting the homepage, like you will click on something called orders. So when you click on orders, again a request will be sent to the server and the server will process the request where it says like, okay, so you are the logged in person and it is supposed to show the list of orders. So it sends you the response. And once a response is received, then you will see the list of your order history. So this way, the client server architecture works. So this client server architecture is nothing but a request response mechanism between a browser and a server. Okay. So this is the basic functionality of a web application. So it could be any web application, and SailPoint is one such web application. Okay. So here is like what we mean by a web application, and this is how like it works. Okay. And again, as I said, we can develop the web applications using different technologies. Okay, nowadays, like we have so many programming languages, so many tools, so many frameworks. So we can develop web applications using any of those. But here, the SailPoint IIQ application. So it is created by SailPoint, the organization SailPoint, right? So the SailPoint organization created our SailPoint IIQ tool using Java technology. Okay. And as we mentioned before, this SailPoint IIQ is an on-premise tool. Okay, so when we say on-premise, like we will get the installer. Okay, we'll get the installer. We have to perform the installation and we start using it. And as we are doing the installation, we are responsible for like applying the patches, upgrading the products in future. Like all these maintenance activities needs to be done by us only. So that's why like it's an on-premise one. So when we say on-premise, like we have to do all of this on our own. But in case of cloud, that is not the case. So you need not to install anything. Like whoever is providing the cloud services, those persons will take care of the application maintenance, installations, patchings, upgrades, everything. It is just that we subscribe and use it. Okay. So this is one more point to be understood when it comes to our SailPoint IIQ application. Okay. And here I would like to make some clarity about the terminology that we use. Okay. So majorly like server. So whenever we say server, there are a lot of things that we basically refer. Okay. So first of all, like I would like to know what is your definition of server? Like what comes to your mind whenever we say server? Anybody?
Basically, where you host the services on a
Yes,
server.
understood. And is that all? Okay. So whatever you have mentioned, so that is acceptable. So that is what we call a server as well. But there are different like kinds of servers. Okay, so we need to be very clear. So which one we are exactly referring whenever we say the term server. Okay, so let's see them one by one. The term server basically can be majorly categorized in two ways. Okay, so first thing, server as a hardware, and second one, server as a software. So whenever I say the term server and I'm referring a hardware server, it means like if we have a rack or if we have our PC where we have like some RAM installed, some processor is present, some storage system is present, which basically is used for processing certain kind of operations. Okay, so all of these hardware components together is also called as server. So that is what we call when we say like server as a hardware. So you might have seen server rooms, server racks. So where we have all these processors like storage devices, processors, everything assembled together. Okay. So these are nothing but server as a hardware. Okay. So that is also a server, right? And majorly, like if we are someone from that particular background, like who works related to that server room, server racks and all, they are more familiar about it. So whenever they say server, like they're referring that hardware parts. Okay. So for us, especially, like we mostly don't deal with hardware, like we only deal with software. So we need to understand what do we mean by server in the software point of view. Okay. So within the software also, we have different types of servers. And among them, the basic one is OS server. It means operating system server. So we have Linux, RHEL, something like that, and we have Windows servers. We pretty much know Windows Server 2008, Windows Server 2012, 16, 19. So this is the term we use, right? We use the term as Windows Server or Linux server. So here, whenever we say server, we are referring to the operating system. Okay. So server as a software will refer to OS as well. Okay. So this is one type of server we have. Okay. And the second one is like web server or application servers. So whenever we say web servers or application servers, these are special types of softwares which are meant to host some services, and mostly it hosts the services for a web application. Okay. So if you want to take some examples, we have WebLogic from Oracle, we have Apache Tomcat, we have Glassfish, we have WebSphere. All of these are web services servers, or we call them as web servers or application servers. The primary purpose of these softwares is to host a web application and expose the services of the web application to others. Okay, so that is the major functionality of these servers. Okay, and whenever we refer the term server, we may be referring these also. So these web servers or app servers also. Okay. And next to that, we have something called database servers. Okay. So this is also a software. And the major purpose of this software and the way the software has designed is to perform the database related operations. And to be more precise, to perform RDB services, relational database services. It means when we say relational database, it stores the information in the form of tables, rows and columns within the tables, and we'll have some linking between these tables. So if you are familiar with RDBMS, then it would make more sense. But to be on a very high note, when we say RDBMS, it means like we'll have some tables just like we have in sheets in Excel, and each table like we have rows, columns that makes up our database basically. So these are the special softwares, so which are meant to provide the database services. So some of the examples in the market are MySQL DB. This is nothing but Microsoft SQL DB or MySQL. We have IBM DB2, Aurora. All of these are some of the database servers available in the market. And as I mentioned, like this is also a server, but it is database server. Okay. So the reason why like we are going through all this explanation is, so in our real-time scenarios while we are working, so we use the term server. So if like Apache Tomcat is not running, we will say server is down. But we should clearly know which server is down. Is it the Linux server that is down? It means the entire operating system is down, or is it only the web application that is down? Okay. And even in our discussions during requirement gathering and at various phases, so we commonly use the term server. For example, if you are dealing with an like person like who gives you like the operating system, he will refer the term server, but you should clearly know which, when he says server, what is he referring? Is he referring the operating system server, or is he referring something else? Okay. So the individual teams have their own scope. If it is a database team, their scope is limited to database, and whenever they say servers or anything, they meant only the database servers. But as an SailPoint implementer, like you will be dealing with all of these, so you should have a clear understanding of what we are referring during our communication. Okay, so this creates a lot of confusion. So that's the reason why like I'm taking this much of effort in order to explain these things. Okay, just to make sure that like you have a clear understanding during our communication. Okay. Uh, any doubts so far, or any confusions you have? Like you are free to like ask any questions you have. Like
Hey, this is Anil. So
yeah,
one question here.
yes.
So, I mean, so far you explained about on-prem SailPoint, right? So is there
Mhm.
also a cloud version that you don't have to do all these things?
Yes.
I joined a little late. I'm sorry if you already explained that, right? So what is this on-prem version called? Like, all these manual deployments and all. So what is this one called as?
Okay. So basically, like we have discussed about this in our demo session, and I'll quickly go through it one more time, just for clarifying you. Basically, whenever we say SailPoint, it is an company name. It's an organization. Okay.
Right?
So this SailPoint is like um, they have a lot of products, like a wide variety of products. Among them, this SailPoint IAQ is one such product. So whenever we say SailPoint, it is not any of the tool that we are referring. It's a company, but IAQ, nothing but Identity IQ is the product.
Okay.
This Identity IQ is an on-premise IAM solution. Okay, so this is an on-premise solution offered by SailPoint. When we say, as we discussed on-premise, like we have to do all the installations, upgrades, maintenance, everything we do. And they have a similar tool, like from the same company, SailPoint itself. In order to provide the same IAM services, they have another tool called IdentityNow. So nowadays they are renaming this identity now to Identity Security Cloud. Okay, so this identity now is nothing but the cloud solution that is offered by SailPoint. Okay, the kind of problems or the major purpose of both the tools is same. Whatever may be the like functionalities or the problems that is solved by both Identity IQ and Identity Now are same. It is just that initially they started with this on-premise tool, and like because of its implementation way and because of the features it is offering, like it has a huge popularity and many people started using that. But as we all know, nowadays cloud is the new buzz. So everyone are trying to move to cloud to keep everything simple, and they don't want to make like maintain their servers, server rooms, data centers anymore. So most of the people are trying to move to cloud, and customers are expecting cloud-based services for everything. So in order to beat the market competition and meet the customer's requirement, they have developed a cloud-based solution. So that is nothing but Identity Now. So the idea is like to have a both.
Got it.
Mhm.
So I was
Okay.
just about to ask a question, right? So understood what you said. My question is, do customers have both products or is it only one or the other?
Most of the time they choose only one at a time, but there are few scenarios where customers are using both. So the reason for using both is like for a transition. For example, they have a good implementation environment of SailPoint Identity IQ, which is an on-premise one, but they want to transition to Identity Now. So this transition cannot happen overnight. Okay, so they slowly migrate all the identities, applications, data from Identity IQ to Identity Now. So initially what they do is, let's suppose like we have 10 applications and let's say like we have like 5,000 user base. So they will do it in a phase-wise manner. Like first they will take the Identity Now tenant and they will move to applications, and they're gonna try to manage with both. So they'll make sure that everything is working fine 100% without any failures in Identity Now, same as in IAQ. Then they will decommission those two applications in IAQ and they will manage them to Identity Now. And again, they will go for 4 more applications. They'll migrate to Identity Now, try to manage it through both and make sure that it is working 100% from Identity Now. Then they will decommission it in IAQ. And next phase, like they will do the transition for rest. So once everything is completely migrated to Identity Now, like they will get rid of Identity IQ. So during this transition phase, they will require both, right? So in those scenarios, they will be using both, but uh, in an ideal scenario, we don't need both. So one tool will be sufficient enough for our IAM implementation. So 90% any customer will use only one tool at a time. But if it is an special case where they are in a transition phase, like in few scenarios, they might be using both.
Understood. Thank you. Yeah.
All right. Okay. Any further doubts from anyone?
There isn't anything like IAQ is for identity management and then Identity Now is for access management. Is there any scenario like that where they use these products for different cases, like
No,
one for single sign-on and the other one for provisioning?
no, nothing like that. So both the tools have all the similar features. Like using these both the tools, we can manage identities, access, everything. But with both the tools, we cannot manage single sign-on. They do support single sign-on, but we cannot implement single sign-on for the organization using these tools. We need some separate tools for that. But one thing about this Identity Now is uh like they're trying to bring in more services. Okay, and all those services are mostly like getting added as additional service to Identity Now. Okay, but we don't have such features in Identity IQ. For example, like we have some special connectors. We have something called machine identities. Okay, it's altogether a like new concept for managing non-human identities. like we'll discuss about that, like what do we mean by non-human identities and all. But they have an inbuilt add-on kind of thing for identity now. So any extension, new features, it is easy to like integrate with the cloud-based technology than the on-premise one. So that kind of privileges they have, but at the very core level, what are maybe the basic operations like identity management, provisioning, reporting, access certifications, and reporting. All of these features are common in both. There is no separation. I hope I answered your question.
You did, right. Thank you.
Okay, cool. So anybody else have any questions like before going further? Okay, then I'll take it as a no. Like feel free to ask questions like if you have any time. Let's deep dive into our next topic. So we discussed like now that we have an understanding that this SailPoint is a Java-based web application. So we are going to perform the installations. So now let us understand what are the software components that are required for installation of our SailPoint IAQ. Okay, so here are the things. So what software components we need? So as it is an Java-based web application, as we discussed, Java-based web application, we obviously need Java in order to run this application. So this technology is developed using Java, and in order to run that, like we need Java as well. Okay, so this is one thing that is required. And within Java, we have two software components. One is called JDK, which stands for Java Development Kit. And the second one is called JRE, which stands for Java Runtime Environment. So anyone have any idea about these two? Have you guys worked with Java anytime and know what do we mean by JDK and JRE? What is the difference?
Yeah, on a higher level, JDK is used mostly for like, deploying applications or making some tweaks and performance changes. JRE is mostly like readable, right? To probably run an application or just to view basic information, lighter version of JDK, I guess.
Kind of. So it's the same thing. So the name itself says Java Development Kit. So when we say Java Development Kit, it contains all the Java related components that are required for developing a Java software, compiling a Java software, and running a software. So it includes like development, compilation, and for running this. So this JDK is also an integral part of JDK. Sorry, this JRE is nothing. JRE is also a subcomponent of our JDK. It means like in order to run a Java software, we need this Java runtime environment. It's a software component. Java runtime environment is a software component that provides all the supporting environment for running any Java application. Okay. So during development, anyhow, like once we develop, compile, we need to run it as well. So in order to run, you obviously need JRE. So this JRE is a subcomponent of JDK. So along with JDK, this JRE has some other tools for developing your Java software and for its compilation as well. Okay, so this is the major difference. It means like if you have your JDK installed, it is as good as JRE will also come. Otherwise, if you install only JRE, that should be sufficient enough. So we are only going to run our Java software. Okay, which is our SailPoint IIQ. Like we are not going to do any development. So minimum JRE is required. But if you have JDK installed, then we are good. It covers JRE part as well. Okay, so this is the first software component that is required for us in order to install our SailPoint IIQ, which is our Java. Okay. And next to that, we need a web server. Because this SailPoint IAQ is a web application. In order to expose the services of a web application, we need a web server. Because in that web server is inside itself, like we are going to host our application. And once it is inside a web server only, we'll be able to access it via browser. Okay, in order to do that, we need a web server. So this is the second software component that is required for our SailPoint installation. And the third one is database. We basically use a relational database in order to store our data. So whatever may be the data we create in SailPoint, everything will be stored in a database for persistency purpose. Okay. So in order to do that, we need a database server as well. Okay. And finally, we need our software components, which is our SailPoint IAQ application. So we will get SailPoint IAQ application as a WAR file. Okay. So let's understand this one as well, WAR. So this WAR is nothing but web archive. So whenever we say WAR file or web archive files, it means any web application, if you take, or any software you take, it is nothing but a set of files and folders. Even in our system, if you go to your C drive, okay, so we'll have our applications installed in program files, right? You take any application, you take MySQL or you take the Git or anything. So that application is nothing but a set of files and folders. Okay, so even you take Java, anything, what does it have? Nothing but some folders and some files with some different kinds of extensions. So similarly, this web application is nothing but a set of files and folders, and whatever may be the set of files and folders that are required for the SailPoint IIQ application are put together and they are compressed in a particular format. This compressed format is nothing but WAR file. Okay, so we have zip, right? Zip is nothing but a compressed format. Okay, so similarly, if you use any Linux system, we have something called tar or tar.gz. So this tar and tar.gz, this is nothing but compressed format of certain files and folders. Okay, so it's nothing but a standard for compressing things, right? So similarly, in case of web application, the compressed format is nothing but WAR, which is web archive. Okay, we'll hear some other thing called jar also. It means nothing but Java archive. So when we say archive, it is nothing but a compressed format. So if you put all of the Java files together, like be it the Java files or class files, and if you compress them, that compressed format extension will come as jar. Okay, so it is nothing but a compressed format, just for your understanding. So this SailPoint IIQ application, we are going to get this application as a WAR file, which means like a web archive file. Okay, so these are the software components that are required for us. Okay, so as we are aware about the software components, let's see how this architecture basically looks. Okay, how we are going to put together all of these softwares. Okay, so we will look into that part, and once that is done, we will deep dive about the particular versions of software that we will be using. Okay, so let's have a look at this architecture diagram in order to understand our deployment architecture. So when we say deployment architecture, it's nothing but the sequence in which we are going to install those softwares. Let's see that one by one. Okay, so the basic software component that is required for us is an operating system server. It could be a Windows server or Linux server. So in order to set up our lab, we are going to use our own operating system, like be it Windows 10 or Windows 11. We are going to use that as our operating system. Okay. But in the real time, we need to use and either Linux based or Windows Server itself. Okay. And then once we have the operating system, the first thing we do is like we install our web server. Okay. So this web server, we are going to choose Apache Tomcat or anything, any web server. Like first thing we need to do is like we need to install our web server. And after installing our web server, we'll go and install our database server. Okay. So once database server is done, then we'll go for installation of SailPoint IAQ web component. Okay. So we have one web component for SailPoint, and then we'll install our database component later on. This database component will be installed inside our database server. So once these two are done, we will establish a link between our web component and database component, so that whatever may be the web operations that are performed, it will be done through this web component. And if there is any data that need to be generated or fetched, then that will be done through this link that we are establishing to our database instance. So this is how the high level architecture of the product is going to look. And also this is the approach we are going to follow for our installation. Okay. So the reason why we need to understand this is like we need to know what happens if we try to touch any of the components. Like we'll be performing installations, upgrades, like some customizations and all, right? During that, we'll be like doing a lot of operations with each of these components. So if you are working with any of the component, you need to understand where it impacts. Okay. For example, I'll give you one small scenario. This is our setup, and I am performing some database related operation. Let's say this database team is asking for an patch to the database to be applied. Even though the DB team does that, our responsibility is to make sure that nothing is linked with our database at a time. For example, they are applying the patching. So during patch, like while applying the patch, some scripts will run, some modification will happen to the database. And our SailPoint IAQ application will also do regular communication to this database as well. So if there is something getting modified, and if our SailPoint IAQ also hits some operation at the same time, there are high possibilities that there may be some data related issues, some files may get corrupted. Such things will happen, right? So in order to avoid such things, for example, whenever we are doing any operation to our database, so this architecture gives us a sense that we need to shut down our Tomcat server, or we need to shut down basically our IAQ application, so that no transactions will happen from this IAQ component to the database, and there will not be any impact even if you make any modifications to your database instance. Okay. So this is the kind of knowledge we need to have like while working real time, because like I have seen people like who are doing blunders without having this basic understanding as well. So that's why like to make it clear, like I have put these block diagrams. Okay. So now we know like we need to install Java, web server, database server, and SailPoint IAQ server. Now let's deep dive into the specific softwares that we are going to use for each of these components. Okay. So in order to understand this, first we need to know which version of SailPoint we need to install. Okay. So the latest version of available SailPoint IAQ is 8.4. And even in 8.4, we have something called 8.4 P2. It means like patch set 2. So previous to patch set 2, we have something called P1, which is patch set 1. Okay. So before like going for any of the software versions and all, like we need to first agree upon the version of SailPoint that we are going to install. So in our lab for practice purpose, we are going to install 8.2 and we'll install patch. It could be patch P4 or P6, P7, like we'll install any patch available. Okay. So the reason why, even though the latest version is 8.4, the reason why we are going to 8.2 is like to leave a scope to learn and practice upgrade as well. For example, you are good with installation, but you want to try upgrade. So that time, if you are on 8.2, it will be easy for you to upgrade it to either 8.3 or 8.4. And similarly, you are on, if you are on some low number of patching like P4, and you don't want to upgrade the version, like you just want to add a new patch, we'll know like how to do it, and we'll have a scope for practicing that. So that's why we are going for some lower versions. But you need not to worry about anything. What are maybe the key features that we use and that we normally implement, that will be same in all the versions. There is no differences. So typically we need not to worry about any of those things. Everything will be covered in this version as well. Okay. So on this note, first thing, after like deciding the SailPoint version, based on the SailPoint version itself, we can decide the versions of rest of the softwares. Okay. Like how we can do that? So SailPoint, they provide an installation guide for us. Okay. So for each version of SailPoint, they will provide an installation guide specific to that version. So we need to first go through that installation document. Okay. So let me go through it. Yeah. So 8.2 installation guide. So if we open this one, if we open the installation guide, so there is a place where they have mentioned about the versions. Okay. So in the very beginning itself, it says supported platforms. So here they would have mentioned about the versions supported by each of the software components. For example, if you say application servers, they will say like what are the application servers that is supported by SailPoint. Okay. So we know like we have WebLogic, WebSphere, we have like Glassfish, we have Tomcat, all these are web servers, application servers, whatever we call. Among them, which version are supported? Like if you take Apache Tomcat, within Apache Tomcat, which versions are supported? So they will have a list of it. So we need to go through this list and we need to stick to the list here. Okay. So this is the place like where we'll verify and select our versions. Okay. So let's go one by one. So first thing, operating systems. So as we discussed, for real time, the operating system supported are here. If it is Windows Server 2016 and 19 is supported, or if it is Linux or CentOS, these are the versions supported. But for our practice purpose, we will use our Windows 10 or Windows 11 operating system only. So is it okay to use it? Because SailPoint is recommending some Windows Server, but we are saying like we'll use our Windows 10 or 11. So can we do that? So that's the question, right? So in order to understand that, so you need to go through this one. You can see this highlighted part. Just read through it once. Okay. So it says the distribution and versions of Linux highlighted below have been verified by Identity IQ engineers. Okay, just note that it is verified by Identity IQ engineers, but any currently available and supported distributions of Linux will be supported by SailPoint. Okay, so the same scenario is applicable for rest of the software components as well. So what are maybe the versions they have mentioned here, or what are maybe the softwares they have mentioned here? So these are the platforms in which the engineering team have tested the product. Okay, so they have verified, tested the product, and made sure that like the software works without any errors in those versions or in those platforms. But any supported platform will also works. Okay, for example, this Apache Tomcat, it is not only for Windows Server 2016 and Windows Server 2019. This Apache Tomcat 9.0 will run on our Windows 10 as well. It runs on Windows 8 as well. So there is no problem with that. It is just that the team have not tested, but as long as it supports, that is what they are saying, any currently available or supported platforms, then you are good to use it. I know this Apache Tomcat 9.0 is supported by my Windows 10 OS, so I can use it. So my MySQL database is supported by my Windows operating system. Basically my Windows 10, I can say. So I can use it. So this is the advantage we are taking out. Like this is the understanding we need to have, but this is only for practice purpose. So for your personal lab, as we cannot procure a Windows server, we are going on using our operating system, and we are using any of the software versions that we need. Okay. But in the real-time scenario, whenever you are implementing SailPoint for any customer, make sure that you are sticking to these versions 100%. Okay, no matter what, you need to use only the softwares mentioned here, and the versions also should be same. The reason is, for example, you are using some other version. So here they're mentioning it's suppose Apache Tomcat 9.0, but you use the latest version, which is like Apache Tomcat 10. Okay, it works 100% fine. But whenever there is an issue with your SailPoint IAQ, and when you reach out to SailPoint with a support ticket saying that, boss, like this is the default function that should work, but this is not working. So if you go with any such questions, the first question that SailPoint asks you is like, what are the software components that you are using? So they will ask you the whole bunch of this list, including your Java platforms. You can see they also mentioned the Java versions that are supported. So they'll go through everything and they will simply say, okay, boss, here SailPoint says you are supposed to use Tomcat 9.0, but you are using 10. The issue could be because of that. The first thing they will say is like, revert your Tomcat to 9.0 and try. And even after reverting it to Apache Tomcat 9.0 and you still face the issue, then only they will take up your case. Otherwise, they will not even consider like whether it is related to your Tomcat version or not, no matter what. Until or unless we are sticking to the versions that are specified here, they will not take up our case. Okay, so for that reason, it is better to stick to the versions they are mentioning here. Okay, so this is the place where we need to go and verify our versions, and let's also check the versions of software that we are going to use. So operating system, as we understood, we are going to use our own laptop where we can have like Windows 10 or 11. This should work fine, but SailPoint is recommending some Windows servers and all, but we know the reason why we are going for that, and we know that it works. Okay, so we are good with operating system. So the next one is web server. So for our implementation purpose, we are going to use Apache Tomcat 9.0, and this Apache Tomcat 9.0 is the latest version of Tomcat supported by SailPoint 8.2. So 8.2 is the version we are going to use, and for 8.2 version, like 9.0 is sufficient enough. It is recommended by SailPoint. So we are good with this one. So the next one is database server, and we are going to use MySQL database for our installation. So along with that MySQL, like SailPoint supports all of these databases. Database on-prem, it supports IBM DB2, it supports MySQL, it supports Microsoft MS SQL, it supports Oracle 19c as well. So among them, the freely available one is MySQL, and we are going to use MySQL 8.0, which is again the latest version supported by our SailPoint version 8.2. Okay. And we are going to use Java, and we will install Java 8. And the good thing with Java is any of the future versions of Java will support Java 8. Java do have something called backward compatibility. So if you take Java 14, whatever is present in Java 8, everything will be present in Java 14. So it do have the backward compatibility, but Java 8 is the minimum thing supported here. You can see Java 8 or 1.8, or we can also use Java 11, which is JDK 11. So we can use anything, like we have like Java 8, and I do have like Java, the other version as well. But anything we can use, but minimum is Java 8. Okay. And after this, like we know SailPoint version like 8.2, and we are going to apply some patch. Okay. So these are the software components that we have in SailPoint and that we are going to download and use. Okay. So in next version, next session, we will see how we can download these softwares. Okay. How we can download these softwares and we can install them. And before going to close the session, I will simply give an high-level walkthrough of the versions available in SailPoint. Okay, how these versions are like structured. Okay, as we have seen here, whenever we refer to SailPoint IAQ and whenever we are mentioning the versions, we have two things. So whatever may be the number we are seeing here, 8.2, this is nothing but base version. So sometimes this is also called as GA, and we also call it as base version. And for each base version, we will have something called patch. So each base version have its individual patches. The patches will say go like P1, P2, P3, like it depends. Let's say for 8.4, we'll have 3 patches, P1, P2, P3. But for 8.1, we may have 6, we may have 7, something like that. So this base version is something that they release very rarely, like every year once or 2 years once, and it will include some major upgrades to the product. There will be some UI related features, there will be some new features added, there might be some bug fixes, anything will be present, but the major changes will be present in the base version. But in case of these patches are released like more frequently, depending on the kind of modifications they want to make. For example, they have any critical bug, or they have some new feature which need to go quickly. So in order to do that, they will give the updates in the form of patches. Okay. So whenever we say version, we'll refer both the base version and also the patch versions. Okay. And one more thing to know about the base version is, for example, right now you are in SailPoint 7.6 base version, and you need to upgrade to 8.2 base version. So in order to go, we need to go through all the intermediate versions that are present in SailPoint. For example, from 7.6, first you need to upgrade to next version, which is 8.0. And from 8.0, you need to go to 8.1, and you need to go to 8.2 later on. So it means from 7.6 to 8.2, in order to do your version upgrade, you need to hop through all the intermediate versions. So basically, you need to perform like 3 upgrades in order to land on your final version here. Okay. In case of patches, it is not the case. These base versions are not cumulative. Okay. It means like changes present in 8.0 will not come along with 8.2. It is not like it carry forwards everything. You need to hop in and go through that. But in case of patches, let's say like you install 8.2 and you need to install patch 3. So in order to install patch 3, you need not to go through patch 1 first, then patch 2, and later on patch 3. You can directly install patch 3. So this patch 3 will takes all the components present in patch 1 and patch 2. So basically the patches are cumulative, but these base versions are not cumulative. So these base versions are sequential in manner. Okay. So this is something to know about SailPoint versions, like both the base version and patch versions. Okay. So whenever we ask, even in interviews or somewhere, whenever they ask you like which version of SailPoint you are using, so you have to mention the base version along with the patch as well. So sometimes if you only mention the base version, they will specifically ask you like which patch you are using. So in order to avoid that, like you better say the base version along with the patch you're using, or at least in order to answer these queries in interview, like you should be aware of this, like what is this number 8.2 and what do we mean by P4 and how they are basically like related to each other. Okay, so this is all about our SailPoint versions as well. So as I mentioned, like we will see how we can download these software components in our next session, and possibly we'll also get started with our lab by our next session. Okay, so we have like 3 more minutes left. I will utilize this time to take the questions if you have any. So feel free to ask if you have any questions. Not in this session, like anything, questions you have from this session or in past sessions, or you have any generic doubts, anything you can ask.
So this is kind of like a single node implementation, right? So how about, since it's going to be on-prem solution,
Mhm.
it's of course high availability. So how do you sync the data, right, between if one data center goes down?
Mhm.
So do we install this application in multiple nodes in multiple regions,
Yes.
data centers?
Yes.
Okay. So is
So
there sync
yeah,
between?
I got your question. So basically what we are trying to do is like we are going to see initially how the single instance of the product looks. Okay, so after that we'll discuss how we'll do a load balancing in a single data center, like how we can use multiple servers in order to balance the load. And later on we'll go for that redundancy purpose where we have like the similar kind of setup present over different data centers. Okay, so basically that redundancy data synchronization, that is not done by SailPoint implementers. The people like who manages the data centers or the people who manages the servers, they do that redundancy things and sync up operations. Okay, anyhow, we'll be discussing that, but that is the scenario.
That makes sense. Thanks.
Any other questions? Okay, I'll take it as a no. And yeah, so if you have any doubts, like feel free to ask anytime. And thank you so much for joining this session, and we'll meet you in next class. Thank you all.
Yeah. Hey, I have one question here. I'm sorry, I'm a little
Yeah,
late.
yeah, please go ahead.
So, as a part of this training, will we also learn about high availability and all that, like configuring web servers and configuring multiple versions and disaster recovery and all that? Do we also learn about those things?
No, no. So basically, that is not in our scope. So as I was saying, so this DR management or the redundancy things, everything basically will be done by separate team, like the people who manages our servers, right? So they basically do that, but we only support them. We only support them with our product components, whether they are present or not, like how they should look, how the services should be established. We'll only help with that, but we don't implement that, and that is not part of our training.
Got it. But we might still need to, let's say, like high availability, right? Since this is
Yes.
an on-prem, if
Mhm.
one version goes down or if one line goes down, you'll have
Yeah,
to have another one. And then when you have multiple installations, you'll have to configure sync between these installations and all that, right?
yeah, yeah, yeah. So that is the reason why I am going through all these product architectures, and that is the reason why I have given you the deployment architecture, everything. Okay. So no matter what they're using, so as long as you have knowledge about this, we will be able to help the team for redundancies and for sync ups, all of this. Okay. So in order to get an idea about that, I'm explaining all these architecture concepts. But I'll give you an like high level overview. So what will be our scope? Like what is our role to do in establishing those things? That much we'll cover.
All right, got it. Thank you.
Yeah. Okay. If you guys don't have any doubts further, like we are good to close the call. Yeah. Thanks again for joining the session.
Thank you.